Hello everyone, this is my debut among this group, but it is also brought about by the organizational changes that occurred at the ministry. As a result of the amendment of the Act on the State Administration. The word biomethane came up quite a bit today, and now biomethane falls under the Ministry of the Environment. As of July 1st, regulatory issues pertaining to the gas sector, broadly understood, were transferred to the Ministry of Industry and the Gas Department of the Ministry of the Environment. Some of the staff has been delegated to the Ministry of Industry, and within that ministry a department was set up to deal with those issues, but it is my honor to represent the Renewables Department of the Ministry of the Environment, which department is responsible for developing the renewables market. The law from 2015 has been a continuous process of responding to challenges related both to legislative changes at the EU level and changes in Poland. There were many discussions, conversations with investors, energy recipients, renewable energy recipients, that is wind, solar, tidal energy, plus biogas and biomethane. Hence, that's why I'm here, and I hope that I will also be attending other cyclical events that you organize, whether those be workshops or the GAZ-SYSTEM forum. And by the way, congratulations on the 10th edition. I hope future editions will be just as successful, and the topics touched upon will be attractive and interesting to participants, informing their knowledge. So that was something of an introduction, but I believe it was indispensable to explain why the Department of Renewable Energy is represented at a meeting of the natural gas sector. This is an area that is very interesting to professionals and specialists, so I think that quite soon you too will be interested in the subject. So it's 10 years down the road since the law on renewables was passed, and we see that photovoltaic installations generating 1 megawatt are now dominant. They are a sort of problem for the electricity system, but hopefully they will present an opportunity as well. So in EU policy, biomethane is really a source of energy with a potential for 35 billion cubic meters. That's no small number, especially if we consider that Poland's potential is over 3 billion cubic meters, according to the assessment of several international organizations and sector studies. We are the 5th member state. We're number 5 when it comes to potential, biomethane potential in the EU. How do we respond? How have we responded to this challenge? Some statistics for you showing the EU's biomethane market. There are over 1,500 biomethane plants In Europe, 1,300 in the EU, 6.4 billion cubic meters of biomethane is produced. In the next 5 years, another 950 biomethane plants will become operational. So just like I said, for photovoltaics, I think we are at a point when back in 2015 there was one powerful PV installation without a supporting system, without any external resources. It was built by somebody who was passionate, and look how far we've come. So by 2030, 24.5 billion euros will have been invested in the biomethane sector. The EBA, studies done by the EBA show that Poland is Europe's number 2 when it comes to planned investments, and those will be worth 3.4 billion euros. Why? Where does this interest in biomethane come from? There are several reasons for this. It's because of politics and the formal and legal documents adopted, directives, executive acts, various regulations that have been passed, as well as the targets that were set in the RED III directive, or in the RED directive. The first the version was back in 2009. We are now at RED III, which imposes on Poland very detailed high requirements to increase the share of renewables in the energy in usage, increasing the participation of hydrogen in the heating sector, in the power sector. So we could develop each of these areas in a variety of ways, and one of the potentials that could help achieve those aims is biomethane or biogas. Poland's biogas potential estimated at 13 to 15 billion cubic meters per year, and out of that, 8 billion cubic meters of biomethane. That is the point of departure for pursuing the targets set in RED III and implemented in documents like the National Plan for Energy and Climate or Poland's energy strategy. So how can we use biomethane? Well, in transport, in electricity, and in the heating sector. These three areas are interrelated, as seen also in the legislation that I'm going to discuss in the latter part of my presentation. However, they indicate that using biomethane, it's not just to generate power and to replace natural gas. Biomethane can also be used in transport and to generate heat in the heating sector. So this has different levels of potential across different sectors. There's also a different time horizon, which has to do with the point of departure. The renewables target for 2030 is to have it account for 32.6% of the final use of energy gross. Now, this diagram shows the challenges and the ambitious quantitative targets that have been set by the Minister of Climate as part of the national strategy. The draft is currently being consulted and analyzed. I think this process is nearing the end. So the quantities you have here on the slide, the numbers, illustrate the great challenges that our economy faces and the sheer extent of the transition in the energy, transport, and heating sectors. But they also illustrate hopes related to innovation, and that will affect all of us. It is in the interest of the end user for all of those changes and all of those processes that come out of the numbers you see on the slide, for the end user to make them as convenient as possible, not painful, so that the economy can develop and society can optimize its aims.
The Ministry of Climate and Environment, like any public administration body, faces legislative challenges. In the legislative area, biomethane has existed and it's present not only in the Act on Renewables. The amendment of August 2023 to the said Act introduced a definition of biomethane. It was also determined what economic activity related to biomethane is. The role of URE and the National Center for Agriculture Support was indicated in the area of biogas and agricultural biogas. Guarantees of origin were incorporated in the Act, and so were cooperatives that produce biomethane. What's more, a mechanism of operational support was introduced for biomethane producers using biogas or agricultural biogas up to 1 megawatt. This system is based on feed-in premium, based on guaranteed price, and the price was determined in the relevant regulation as the Executive Act to the amendment that I told you about. Reference prices of biomethane for renewable installations, be that based on biogas, on agricultural biogas, are 538 PLN for megawatt hour and 545 PLN for megawatt hour. Respectively, the support period is 20 years from the date of commissioning and producing the first quantities of biomethane. Importantly, and this is something that I would like to focus on now, it is still valid. Nowadays, the Renewables Department is in the process of preparing 3 amendments of the Act A on Renewables, the so-called EUD 41 draft that has already undergone consultations at the ministerial level. The issues that matter concern support from biomethane plants with capacity of over 1 megawatt. We would offer an auction system here modeled at the solutions that are already present in the Act on Renewables. We shall be introducing them into other areas, not only PV installations or biomass installations or other kinds of renewables, but we want to include biomethane installations here as well. These solutions have been cleared by the European Commission. We thoroughly verify and evaluate the scope of state aid in terms of investment and the operational aspects. Another important topic included in the draft that is being worked on by the Minister of Climate and Environment is the definition of gas pipeline and direct producer of biogas, the speaker rephrases himself, the definition of direct biogas gas line will allow for greater use of biomethane. The funds earmarked for investments in this scope, this is my next slide, without CapEx and OpEx support from the perspective of methane, well, it would not be feasible. I mentioned the regulatory aspects, feed-in premiums, auction system. This is a guarantee for investors of at least 20 years of continuous support for the investments, just like in the case of PV installations or other renewables. There, the support is only for 15 years. And we also need support in terms of CAPEX. Here we are talking about Phoenix above all, that is European funds for infrastructure, climate and environment. Action 2 and Action 2.3. In total, we are talking here about 2.3 billion zlotys in 2.2 and around 1.8 billion euros in 2.3, that is intelligent gas infrastructure and intelligent energy systems. Irrespective of that, we also have funds from Modernization Fund. We have the Energy for Rural Areas program with a budget of 1 billion PLN for the time, 1 billion zlotys for the time being. There is a huge interest from potential investors. It goes way above 1 billion zlotys. Therefore, we should soon expect a decision by the National Fund for the Protection of Environment to increase the sums available on the program. Financing, as I mentioned, takes place under the formula of Phoenix program. The calls are organized by the National Fund for the Protection of the Environment. As for other potential activities, the ones listed here related to Action 2.2 or other are at different stages of implementation. The calls and the proposals that are related to the programs are either closed or about to be closed in 2025. They are run by the Institute of Kerosene and Natural Gas State Research Institute. As for the rural areas program, it's still open, Energy for Rural Areas. The proposals are being evaluated as we speak. I think that at the beginning of 2025, we shall have the first sums under the Energy for Rural Areas released. Ladies and gentlemen, to wrap up, we are at the stage that is very close to the beginning. This is a preliminary stage, let me say it openly, but this is where we were back in 2015 with renewables, biomethane plants, use of biogas. These are all elements that, in my opinion, through legal regulations, through assumptions of different plans, programs, directives such as RED 3, or the national initiatives are clearly requiring us to support, inspire, transform, and motivate investors to develop the market. And just like in the case of the renewables installations prior to 2015, I think that within the coming years the share of biomethane in the electricity generation structure, in transport or in heat generation will be increased. The use of biomethane is also a topic for the broadly understood transport sector. I did not talk about it in my presentation, but the Renewables Department is currently at the final stage of preparing an amendment to the Act on Biocomponents and Liquid Biofuels. There, the group of so-called advanced biocomponents, Group 2, in attachment to the directive, speaks of use of biomethane in transportation. It will be a requirement for fuel companies. Biomethane will have to be an additive to fuels, be that petrol or diesel. I'm sure you will be observing the processes of changes and following what is happening in the regulatory framework. I am of the opinion that the broadly understood natural gas sector will focus on biomethane, but each form of development of new sources of energy is interesting, not only the ones based on biomethane and biogas. It all can be a source of inspiration, ideas, how to develop the market. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for having me here. It was a true pleasure to speak to you today.